I feel like I've learned more about myself as a Muslim woman and growing up in a Muslim minority society, and that has encouraged me to continue to veil and has shaped why I choose to continue to veil. It's a way to like connect to my faith. It's a way to be connected to like the Muslim society within a Muslim minority society, and it's kind of just like you know that you belong somewhere, you know. I began to veil because I had made a lot of changes, and I wanted it to reflect on the outside. I wanted to show maturity. I wanted to show my parents that I could make, you know, good decisions on my own. My name is Mamouna Ilyas. I'm a Pakistani American, and I grew up in High Point, North Carolina. I'm a student at UNC Chapel Hill and a global studies major.
You know, it was uncomfortable because I didn't know everything that was demanded of a Muslim woman who wears hijab. I didn't know what standards I was supposed to follow, so I just did my best. The day I did it, I mean, I worried about everything, every little thing. I worried about the clothes that I was wearing, whether they were modest enough. I smoke. I worried about smoking a cigarette. I sort of hid in a corner the times that I smoked cigarettes in public. And my boyfriend met me for lunch, and he kissed me, and I was worried about that. It's just total normal everyday experiences for me. Buying a pack of cigarettes was terrifying, standing in line and everyone was watching me. And things that I normally just don't even think about. I really didn't know how to interpret these feelings at the time or later. I sort of thought of them as my own worries and not wanting to give a false representation of a Muslim woman who wears hijab. I wanted to at least try and like stick as close to these boundaries as possible. And then later, thinking about it more and more, and it continually coming up in my thoughts in a way that I never ever thought it would. My name's Karen Aldifer, but I go by Carly. I'm 21. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. I'm a junior at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I'm majoring in comparative literature, and I'm actually not of any religion.
I choose to veil because I believe it's an obligation on the Muslim woman, and I do feel modest in it. I feel a sense of beauty in it, and so that is why I wear it. But previously it was because my parents recommended that I should wear it, and that many of my friends wore it, and so that just made it easier for me to wear it. And then I started interpreting veiling in my own way, which is why I wear it now. Living in Durham and Chapel Hill, I don't face that much discrimination. I feel like people here are very open-minded, but I do think about, like, when I'm traveling, I do think that people may be looking at me a certain way, but here I'm comfortable, so it hasn't been a challenge for me. I would like non-Muslims to know that Muslim women who veil, for the most part, they choose to, especially if they live in this country or a country that allows them to make the choice, that they are able to wear it fashionably if they choose to. They can wear it conservatively. They make their own interpretations. That Muslim women who veil like to dress up with their veil or without their veil. They like to color their hair, have haircuts, anything. We like to accessorize with the hijab or without the hijab or the veil. My name is Sahar Osman. I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina. My parents are originally from Sudan, and I consider myself Sudanese American, and I am a junior at the University of North Carolina.
We were working so hard to dispel the idea of this homogeneous notion of veiling, that it was no one's business what my reasons were for veiling, and that this idea that people could make this association about me and that I needed to dispel it wasn't what should govern my practice of veiling. What I found, first of all, is that people were not willing to ask, and this really frustrated me. And so initially I think I was not getting I don't think I was getting the right experience out of the project. And certainly once you get into the project, any of these really ethical dilemmas that come into play from a conceptual point of view go out the window, because everything goes into practical application. If your veil is staying on as you're running to class, if you're supposed to talk to people of the male gender, how you carry yourself while you're wearing the veil, can you curse, for example? And these are things that I don't think about day to day, and I don't necessarily know that people who daily wear the veil think about them either, because that might not be their normal practice. But again, this initial responsibility to teach just flew out the window. And then as I thought about it more, I think it goes back to this idea of constructing your own faith, and that I also felt ingenuine representing a faith that was not my own. We need to allow these women who wear the veil or the niqab to construct their own spirituality, not driven from our assumptions or associations with Islam, but rather that is a conglomerate of their culture, of their faith, of their spirituality. And so I think it goes back to the notion that there is not one genuine representation of Islam or of one's culture, and that this is, if there is this genuine representation, it is not limited to who wears the veil or for what reasons. My name is Anna Samper, and I am a 20-year-old from Richmond, Virginia, and I am a junior at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I'm a political science and Asian studies major, and I do not identify with a certain faith.
I think that primarily every woman wears it for the first reason being that it's an obligation in the Islamic religion, and then underneath that I think each woman has her own personal choice for doing so. Since I've started wearing it, it's kind of a journey in itself, and it's kind of all kind of spiritual, and it's all kind of satisfying but I mean, I might have not had that moment yet where I think it's actually very spiritual and satisfying, but as of right now, I think that's how the whole journey's been. I would say the biggest challenge I've experienced since veiling would be just the amount of people that just look at you differently or stare at you differently when you, like for example, if I go shopping, or if I'm going to school, or if I'm going to the mall or something, people just look at you, and sometimes they don't just look at you and turn around, they just glare at you. And I think that's the one thing I've had a problem, or not really a problem with, something that I've had to adjust to since I've started veiling. My name is Amira Shihada, and I'm a sophomore at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I was originally born in Egypt, but I lived in America 18 years of my life, and I'm 19.
Over the course of the past 13 to 1400 years that Islam has been a faith, most of the dialogue on veiling has been a discourse dominated by males and masculine views. And that's unfortunate because, as we know, veiling is a feminine sartorial practice, so it's a problem, and the dialogue needs to shift away from male-specific discourse to include the views of women as well. I've also learned that the reason a lot of Muslim women don't see themselves as being oppressed by the veil, Layla Ahmed writes about this eloquently in her book. It's the idea of at least two Islams existing. One being the ethical Islam that's contained in the words of the Quran that women have access to as part of their faith, and the other being the sort of legal, juridical, political Islam that has established itself in Muslim majority countries that is very male dominated. And that's where any Western perceived oppression comes from. So this dichotomy is something that Westerners generally don't understand, and I didn't even understand despite being an Arabic studies major until I read her book, and it sort of clicked for me. I've also come to understand the multiplicity of practices behind veiling and reasons for veiling, and in that way it's shattered any attempts that I used to make at pigeonholing Sort of subconsciously, we all evaluate people based on their appearance, and I'm not going to claim that that's ever going to stop for me. But when I see a veiled woman, the things that I think I pass much fewer judgments, and the ones that I do pass are generally, until I speak with this woman, I'm never going to know what her reasons are, and that's okay. It's her choice. So in that way, it's sort of opened my mind and changed and lessened the judgments that I make, just split second in first seeing a woman who's veiled. My name is Chris Nickel, and I'm a 21-year-old from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm here at the University of North Carolina. I'm a senior, majoring in music and Arabic studies, and I come from a Christian background, but identify simply as spiritual.
Well, I don't really have one set spiritual experience for veiling, mainly just like walking in the street, or if I were to see people not veiling and people that are veiling, I just feel like as a veiled woman, I'm more protected and I'm not as objectified, and people look at me and really hear what I have to say rather than focus on what I look like. I grew up in a very conservative Christian small county, and so me and my siblings were the only Muslims in the high school, and so we had a lot of people asked us questions, but at the same time there were, occasional ignorant comments made. For example, I was asked if I was related to Osama bin Laden, or somebody mentioned that what I wore was called like a towel head, or just certain instances and remarks like that is what I've had to go through. What I would like non-Muslims to know about Muslims who do veil is just that we don't need to be saved. We're fine just the way we are. We choose to veil for whatever reason it may be, and we should have the right to veil. Even if I were to choose to wear the niqab, I should have the right to do that, even if I don't agree with it. It's just how people feel they should be closer to God, and they show it in their own way. I think all Muslims should have that right to veil or to not veil. My name is Dina Shihada. I was born in Alexandria, Egypt, and I moved to the States when I was about 2 years old. I'm currently a student at UNC Chapel Hill, and I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Well, Advance, North Carolina, but nobody's really heard of Advance, North Carolina.
So I took the hijab for a day as part of experiential learning, and I have to say that I think that my experience was different than other people's in the class, because I'm half Chinese and I'm half Scotch-Irish, but apparently I pass very easily as being Arab, and so most people thought that this was sort of a new practice that was actually an expression of my religion, and other people thought that it was a social experiment, and all the strangers that I ran into legitimately thought that I was just a Muslim woman. And so I think that colored my experience in a way that maybe a blonde-haired, blue-eyed student in Sahir's class would not have experienced. And so for me, it was more experiencing what I think is the everyday treatment of Muslim women in the US, which is basically being unacknowledged and ignored, but being very much in the public eye. I felt like everybody was looking at me and everybody was avoiding me at the same time, which was really difficult because I'm very outgoing and sort of effusive, and so it was really confusing for me when I would talk to a stranger on the sidewalk and they wouldn't be as responsive as they usually were, and it just occurred to me as being absolutely absurd because I'm the same person, I'm just wearing a scarf on my head, and for that to be such an alienating factor for so many people made me realize how there's such a problem in the United States of understanding Islam. It was sort of enlightening for me in a more, I would say a less like academic way, because I didn't think about these really pithy things like what is the authenticity of Islam and what is the plurality of perspectives of women who veil. It was kind of just, wow, people don't treat us very nicely in the US, do they? It was sort of a very basic realization that became very personal for me the day that I wore the hijab.
great.
I'm Christine Abernathy. I'm a senior at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm 21 from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm studying political science and women's studies, and I am Episcopalian, and sometimes I observe Jewish services.
I think the Islamic veil is a very personal item, and to each person it means something different. I think that the veil often is a way for a woman to feel closer to God and to feel more modest. I have never really felt like I was quite ready to veil. I feel like when a woman chooses to veil, she eliminates some certain ways of life when she takes on the veil. There are a lot of things that I would not be able to participate in if I were to veil, such as going swimming with my children, or different activities with them that I feel like it would be more of a constraint at this point in my life. It's not likely for me to end up veiling in the long term. I feel like a woman can express her religion and express her closeness to God as a Muslim without veiling. Other Muslim women who veil are really strong, and I think that they deal with a lot on a daily basis, and I know that they deal with a lot of discrimination, especially in non-Muslim countries, and I really think that that's honorable that they can manage to so outwardly show their religion comfortably. My name is Sarah Mustafa, and I'm originally from Cairo, Egypt, but I've grown up in Hillsborough, North Carolina since the age of 7. I'm a global studies major at UNC with a second major in Arab cultures and a minor in Arabic.